On behalf of the League of Women Voters, the St. Peter Herald, and the St. Peter Chamber of Commerce, good evening and welcome to this forum where we will hear from the candidates for Nicollet County Commissioners. In District 2, the candidates are Terry Morrow and Chuck Zeman. Running unopposed for District 4 is Jack Collards. My name is Harriet Mason. I'm a member of the League of Women Voters. My job here this evening is to help our moderator, Lynn Solo, who is president of our league, to keep track of the candidates and the questions. This is the second of 2 county office candidate forums this evening. We had planned for about an hour for this one. We welcome you back to those who participated in the previous one for the County Attorney Forum. Allow me to take a moment to remind those present to silence their mobile phones. This forum is being recorded in its entirety and will be shown on St. Peter Public Access TV and Mankato Public Access KTV. Now I will turn the forum over to Lynn.
Thank you, Harriet, and I'm pleased to be here this evening. The League is a local, state, and national nonpartisan grassroots 501c3 organization that promotes the active, informed involvement of the public in the voting process. The League neither supports nor opposes political parties or individual candidates. Tonight, I will present questions to the candidates that address issues relevant to the upcoming election. Questions have been submitted online by the public and also formulated by the League of Women Voters and its co-sponsors, the St. Peter Herald and the St. Peter Chamber of Commerce. We invite those present here tonight to submit questions as well. Hold up your hand and an usher will offer a 3x5 card and a pen or collect your question when you're finished. We will not ask questions that are illegible, of a hostile nature, those of a personal nature not relevant to the elective office, or those that are gratuitous, friendly, or asked for the purpose of making a statement rather than for eliciting information. Helping us out tonight are Ed Lee, Director of the St. Peter Chamber, and Helen Baumgartner, fellow League member. They will be screening questions. League member Linda Whitty is our timer, and also Marianne Scharf. Tony is behind the camera. Each candidate will be allowed 1.5 minutes for opening and closing statements and 1.5 minutes to respond to questions. In addition, each candidate will have 2 30-second rebuttals. Candidates, please raise your rebuttal card if you would like to use your rebuttal. You might have to wave it hard at me.
All right.
Yeah. Okay. So I'd like to introduce the candidates. In District 2, which includes Brighton, Granby, Oshawa Townships, and St. Peter Ward 2, which is precincts 1 and 2, we have Terry Morrow and Chuck Zeman. Running unopposed in District 4 is Jack Collards, and his district includes North Mankato precincts 4, 5, and 6. And the person who won the raffle for who goes first is Terry Morrow. So Terry will start with our opening questions.
Wonderful.
Opening statements.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you, Lynn. Thank you, Harriet. Thank you, members of the League, for putting together this event. It's tremendously important and a valuable opportunity to share ideas and to tell a little bit about ourselves as you make a decision for this upcoming election. You know, Martha and I came to St. Peter over 20 years ago now, and I was walking up the stairway, and I saw a picture with the number 2449 on it. It was the number of volunteers who came together to build a tremendous playground that's right outside the window. Martha had worked across from a similar playground in Illinois when I was in graduate school. And after the tornado, she and Wendy Bachman, Tracy Pyman, Janice Copenhaver came together and thought we could build one here. because Martha and I believe in St. Peter. We believe in community. We raised our family here. We believe in education. We believe in public service like the Tremendous Playground. Now, when Martha was helping raise money for the Tremendous Playground, they put together tiles with people's hands on it, and you contributed money to put your tile up there. And Jesse Ventura came to town one day, and Martha was determined to get Jesse's handprint in the tile. And I wanted to ask Jesse Ventura, as governor, how was he going to pay for education? And what I learned was I was committed to public service. I ran for school board. I ran for state representative. And I believe my knowledge and experience in all those positions, my passion for service, will help me serve in this position as well. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Zeman.
Good evening. Thanks again to the League of Women Voters, the Herald, and to the Chamber of Commerce. My name is Chuck Zeman. I have been in St. Peter for 42 years. I was born and raised on a dairy farm in McLeod County, and I attended Gustavus, and after that I went to the University of Minnesota and graduated with a Bachelor of Science degree, or Bachelor of Science in Business Administration, excuse me. My wife Woody, and I don't know why I need to go, as long as we're talking about our wives, I don't know why I need to go on the 4th of July parade, because nobody wants to see me. All I ever hear is Woody, Woody, Woody. And she's a native of St. Peter and is a retired school teacher. I retired from the assessor's office at Nicollet County in August of 2017. I have a desire to serve that was instilled by my mother. My mom, at the age of almost 90, spent time up until 10 days before she died volunteering. And I thought, if she can do it, I sure should be able to do it. Thank you.
Mr. Kolars.
Thank you very much to the League and to all those who are here this evening. I come to you tonight with some experience as a county board member, and I will tell you that my wife Jane and I have raised 4 sons. One of them is 43 and says he's really old. The last one, the youngest, is 20 and a junior at Mankato State. I came to Mankato area in 1971 after growing up on a farm in rural Montgomery, Minnesota. Kolachkis is what we ate every day back in the day, but was influenced by my dad and mom, who were always interested in what was happening with the local schools, what was happening in their township, and what was happening at the county level. In fact, Dad was the first farmer elected to the Montgomery School District School Board. And so I was young, and my heroes were being assassinated with Kennedy and King and Kennedy. And when I got into school, I wanted to be a radio announcer, a news reporter, and now I'm being told to stop. That's probably a good place to stop. Thank you very much. I will fill you all in later.
Yep.
Thank you. The first subject that we'll talk about is the environment, and I want to let you know that I'll be using a sort of random rotating drill to mix it up just a little bit, so you don't, at any rate, I'll try to give you a heads up as to who's next. We're going to start with Jack, and then it will go to Chuck, and then to Terry. Did I get that right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So the first question is, what do you see as Nicollet County's environmental vulnerabilities And what steps might you take to address them? So, Jack Kolars.
Our vulnerabilities, you say?
Yes,
Okay. Well,
environmental vulnerabilities.
our county just completed is completing a comprehensive plan to deal with what's happening with everything Nicollet County, whether it be bluffs, rivers, and how we live and what we have growing in our rural areas. I think that our organization of the county right now in the Environmental Services Office, which is named something else now, Mandy, Property Services is what we call it. I know Mandy Landcamer is here this evening. I think they do an excellent job in helping us to understand better what we can do as county board members to carry forth the ideas of protecting our environment, whether it be from feedlots to building on bluffs by the river. And so that's what I would say as my first answer, to keep it short for these people here.
Okay. Chuck is next, and then Terry Morrow.
All right.
Chuck Zeman.
Environmentally, it's always, almost everything the county does or city does has got to be a balance between cost and what is good for the environment. St. Peter, since I've been on the city council, and I'm not going to take credit for this because there's 7 of us, and since I've been mayor, we have looked at many ways of trying to improve our footprint, carbon footprint. We have looked at solar, and we make that available for people to purchase. I know the county looked at it, but I think, Jack, you can tell me, I think they declined to do anything at this point. So that would be something. The other thing which has come up recently, it's been a problem for quite some time, is that we have a luxury of being on the Minnesota River, but it's also can be a detriment because of the runoff and the discharge of water quality. And we've been battling now west of the school on 361st Avenue, it's called. The water coming down the hill, down the bluff, and going across, and all of this is eventually ending up in the river. We are working, we've started a committee that would be looking at trying to create some kind of a reservoir system if possible, and working with the county, with the city, and with some other agencies to try to rectify that problem. So those are things that we can immediately look at.
Thank you. Mr. Morrow, environmental vulnerabilities.
Right, well, thank you, and I think that both speakers have touched on some key points. This was something that came up a great deal when I was in the state legislature because I was on both the Transportation and Agriculture committees. I was also on the Natural Resources and Environment Committee, and that's when I was one of the authors of the Clean Water Legacy Act, because I knew that we needed to invest more money as a state in order to protect our environment. What were some of the things that we've been able to do? Through Nicollet County's offices, we're actually able to offer programs such as CRP, as RIM. These are programs that help farmers, encourage farmers to take land out of production. Marginal land, for example, that can be very helpful in protecting our water quality. We can also do things like create wetlands and other ways to slow down the water flow. That's not something we've heard of yet tonight, but when I was in the state legislature and with Senator Sharon, we worked on proposals from local farmers, local communities to put in wetlands to slow down the flow of water before it even hit the Minnesota River. I think it's possible, and I think we must collaborate. We must work together rather than hand down edicts from up on high. We need to cooperate with our communities. We need to work with our farmers. We can do this work if we do it together.
Thank you. And the next question, we're going to start with Mr. Zeman, and then Mr. Morrow and Mr. Kolars. And we want to know how you would finance these ideas.
Well, unless you're going to get federal funding, state funding for do some of these things, most of these have to be done by taxing. There just isn't any other way to do it unless you're willing to have somebody fund a project that would require this. Nobody likes to raise taxes, but if we're going to weigh out the benefits, we have to be really careful in how we do that. I wish, when programs are administered and aren't mandate, when they're administered and just mandated, that there would be some funds available as, like Mr. Morrow said, the upper echelons of government, put down these mandated requirements. So that's, unless somebody else knows something I don't know about the system, taxes are something that is a concern for everyone. We all would love to be a nice, clean environment and all these other things, but we have to be able to pay for them.
Thank you. Mr. Morrow?
Well, we certainly need to balance the budget. There's no doubt about that. As a school board chair, we balanced the budget in St. Peter. Even when we had to make cuts, we made thoughtful, careful cuts in order to balance the budget because we had that responsibility to do it. We did the same thing at the state when I was in the legislature. We had to cut the budget in the years of the recession. So what do we do in this case? Well, it's certainly true that there are mandates that are handed down from the federal and state government that aren't always funded. We need to think about those, but we also have to think about the reality of the situation in which we live, and we have to think about our community, its needs, and its direction in the future. Just looking at the Nicollet County budget, and Jack can talk about this as well, the Nicollet County budget, the percentage on property taxes has increased of the overall budget, but the costs that have been incurred are in some ways out of control of our commissioners. Out-of-home placements, for example, went up $500,000 for this coming year, went up $426,000 in the year 2018. There's been a need to hire in health and human services because caseloads are increasing, because need is increasing. We've got our road and bridge funding is approximately 1/2 of what we need. Now, the county was put in a very difficult position. Raise taxes locally to pay roads and bridges, wheelage tax and a local sales tax. When I was in the legislature, I argued against that provision because I thought the state should fund its responsibility, not pass it along to local commissioners to do the heavy lifting.
Thank you.
So your question is, how do we finance ideas for the environment?
Yes.
And that's basically...
Though we've kind of gotten a little into budgeting and
And that's
such,
okay.
but
I want to answer the way
Yeah.
Terry did, I think. I mean, the legacy, the clean water legacy issue is something that we appreciate the opportunity for that. Seeking state funds is, I think, the way to do that. But I want to just go on a little bit more, not more important than any other subject, but currently we face in our county large issues. Out-of-home placement costs are a large issue for our children. Growing demand for health and human services is another large issue, including child protection, medical assistance needs, lack of adequate road funding that you talked about, Terry. And that lack of adequate road funding comes from the state legislature. They're just at this point not doing their job. As commissioners, we study these issues, and these are the three challenges that I think are the most important, and maybe we'll have an opportunity to visit about them some more, but we can't ignore them. When I think about what we've got going now, can we move forward without funding these areas? And the answer is, well, we should not ignore those type of challenges. We just shouldn't. If we're going to make Nicollet County a better place to live, we need to find ways to meet that $500,000 increase in out-of-home placement cost that we've seen in the last 3 years. We need to add 11 positions in the health and human services area to stop people from talking at debates. Sorry about that.
that's,
I need to concentrate on Lynn
you were
here.
rolling. Staying on finances just a little bit yet, I've had someone ask, and we'll start with Mr. Kolars and go to Zeman and Morrow. You've mentioned the wheelage tax, or someone mentioned the wheelage tax. And this person asked, do you support the wheelage tax? And how long do you think it should be continued?
Well, I was the original sponsor of the wheelage tax after it was made available to us by the state legislature. When we first introduced it, I thought that we had 3 votes to carry it. In county government at this level, you need to know how to count 3. It was a 2 to 3 vote for that. And so a new election came along and we just passed it within this past couple of years. How long do I feel that it needs to stay in effect? Is that what you're asking me? As long as the state legislature doesn't fund us properly. I mean, we've had to add the half-cent sales tax here in Nicollet County, which raises about with wheelage and sales tax, we're raising about $1.5 million on a budget that is already $3 million behind what our needs are. And so that's important. The idea of, as Terry mentioned, and Chuck I know has talked about it as well, we need to partner with our partners at the state of Minnesota. That's the most important thing that we can do, I believe, as commissioners. We partner with our neighbors in Brown and Blue Earth County and Sibley County. We need to partner with the state to encourage them to pass a real transportation bill so that we could get we could forgive the wheelage tax down the road if necessary.
Thank you. Mr. Zeman and then Mr. Morrow.
The wheelage tax, yeah, I guess I wasn't involved with that, but I know its purpose. What I initially knew about it, I would not support it. I think it's adding, once again, another tax or another burden onto the public, especially after we've asked for the 0.5% increase in sales tax. Now, we've had these 2 instigated, and we still, with the budgets here, which the county just concluded, asked for another $116,000 for roads. So I'm kind of wondering where it stops. You know, that's the thing I hear from knocking on people's doors, especially in the rural areas. You know, the rural economy is in a little trouble. And this is something that, especially the wheelage thing, seems to hit them a lot more than anybody else. Thank you.
And Mr. Morrow.
Thank you. As I mentioned, the wheelage tax was part of the overall transportation bill after the 35W bridge collapsed. And the reason it was put in was because some counties, not Nicollet County, but some counties said, we want to also be able to do a wheelage tax. We also want to be able to do a local option sales tax. These taxes might make more sense in a suburban or metro area, but they're harder hit in a rural area. That's why I was deeply concerned about it. But we have to be cognizant of the problems that we face too. Just go out to County Road 12 right now and you can't go through County Road 12 because of the water level. We need to fix County Road 12. That is an expense. That's an expense in a rural part of Nicollet County, and we need to do it. We need to get Highway 14 expanded to 4-lane. The safety improvements on the Nicollet to North Mankato part alone show us why that work's important. Plus, it's so important to our economy, as is opening up roads like County Road 12. I believe that Nicollet County is doing the best work it can to keep our roads and bridges safe. We need 10-ton roads. We need 10-ton bridges for ag. We need safe roads for everybody. We need safe bridges for everybody. And the cost of those projects go beyond what the state is providing in terms of transportation spending. That's why the Association of Minnesota Counties is calling for the state to do something, and that's why I'm calling for the state to step up and come up with a 21st century transportation funding plan.
Thank you. Mr. Kolar.
Just to add to that, if we didn't have the half-cent sales tax, we would be in a further hole with our future fixing of County Road 12. I mean, we're going to be using some of those monies to do the study on how to make this road above water. So, you know, that's another reason that it's helping us immediately, the half-cent sales tax. And I could talk about transportation all night. So.
Okay. Mr. Zeman has That's his rebuttal as well.
Okay, correct me if I'm wrong. In talking with people that live out in that area, I believe the cost is right around, for fixing the road, $850,000, or is that a light
Oh,
figure?
it's going to be more than that.
Okay.
2 million,
$2 million.
at least.
Okay. There are a lot of people out there convinced that that isn't necessary. They're convinced that they can be handled a lot of different ways. Not a lot of different ways, but by working with the DNR and with other government entities, and do it for a lot less than what we're looking at for that kind of expense.
I'll just say that I trust what our county engineer is telling us, okay? There are ideas to put some concrete there and gravel there and try to keep the water from the slough away.
Is this another rebuttal, or?
Well, sure.
Okay.
And I will say to you, Lynn, and to answer your question, Chuck, we've heard from those folks out there. We are making progress on this, but to put together an inadequate fix is not the answer. The answer is to fix it forever if we can.
Thank you. Let's move on to a slight, well, almost the same topics. We're going to start with Mr. Morrow, then Mr. Kollars, and Mr. Zeman. Can you prioritize your budget? What are your top 3 budget issues?
Sure. And I think in part, we could look at what the current county commission budget is. Right now, under the current county commission budget, about 27.5% of the expenditures are on human services. About 24% are on general public services. 20% is on roads and bridges, or in the budget it's called highways and streets. And then public safety is 15%. I think those 4 categories reflect the priorities that this county believes in. This county believes in having a safe community, that the work of the sheriff's department, the work of our county attorney, the work of our courts, helping keep our community safe, and also to ensure that justice is done. I think that our community believes that health and human services are critically important. They're a central thing that county governments do. I think our community believes in helping children in need. I believe our community believes in helping adults. I believe our community believes in serving the elderly. I think our community believes in making sure that we have a thriving community in which every person who's here, whether you're a person who grew up on a century farm or you just moved to Nicollet County, that you have an opportunity to thrive, to raise a family, to pursue your dreams. And the priorities of the county budget, I think, reflect the county's best effort to make those conditions exist so that our community continues to be a great place to live.
Thank you. Mr. Kollars.
I'll look forward to representing Nicollet County with either one of these gentlemen and with Marie Drantle, who is here, and our 2 new commissioners. Terry does a good job, I think, of putting into words what we're doing. So since 2010, the tax base in Nicollet County has been growing faster than our tax levy has. Some of this has been accomplished by restructuring several departments, including the auditor, the treasurer, environmental services, assessor, public health, human services, and others to create efficiencies and to better deliver services that we need to deliver to our residents. And we also have undertaken several items in the past couple of years by building a new health and human services building, updating our sheriff's department on the same campus. In terms of improving fiscal responsibility, I mean, it's the practice of our Nicollet County Board to meet each department head on an annual basis to listen to what their hopes are as they move forward in the coming year. And this gives our budget committee an opportunity to hear and see what those needs may be. And then we bring that to the full county board and we discuss it. And it works in Nicollet County. This is how we put our budget together. I believe that what we're doing for our residents in Nicollet County is top 10 in the state of Minnesota.
Thank you. And Mr. Zeman.
Would you restate the question?
Sure. What would be your top 3 budgetary priorities?
I wrote them down when the two gentlemen were talking, but I had basically the same thing, but my first one would be public safety. As mayor of St. Peter, and any elected official, public safety, no matter if it's your roads or however you take care of that, or whether it's the law enforcement, public safety has to be number 1. Human services, social services, once again, things that need to be taken care of for our community to prosper, be welcoming, and to encourage people to come here in order for our communities to grow and prosper and add to the tax base. The last thing I'd like to point out, and I think the third priority, and I've asked people this in town, how many times have you called your county commissioner when you have a problem? And I've yet to find anybody that lives within the city limits. So I think our third priority, and I hate to qualify them, is our rural farmers, our rural area, and their needs and their roads and their County Road 12 and everything else that affects them directly, because they're the ones, and Jack can speak better to this, they're the ones that most of the decisions that are made by the county commissioners affect. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question, we're going to start with Mr. Zeman, then Morrow and Kolarz. And staying on the subject of rural areas, would you support county funding to increase and/or improve access and high-speed access to broadband services in the rural areas?
I would. I'm not so certain in speaking to the other commissioners that represent the rural areas that it's a real problem. It doesn't seem to be brought up at meetings that I've attended. It doesn't seem to be brought up by the communities that are out there, the citizens that are out there. But if it is absolutely necessary, yes, we need to find a way to fund and help people get access to broadband and be able to hopefully improve their lives. I'm not so certain all the times that broadband or Facebook or whatever we want to use is improving lives, but hopefully when it's used properly, it will.
Thank you. Mr. Morrow.
Well, thank you, and I think this is a serious question, and it's more than about using social media. It is true that Nicollet County has, compared to some counties, especially in northern Minnesota and western Minnesota, has relatively good broadband access. That doesn't mean it's perfect, and doesn't mean it couldn't be better, but it's vitally important. It's vitally important for the very issues that we're facing. I was just in a meeting with the state demographer, the person who, at the state level, tells us all about what our population is doing. And you know what? Our population's aging. I'm at the very bottom of the baby boom. The baby boom is going to start retiring. And what can internet and what can broadband do? It can help with telehealth. It can help people stay in their homes and receive medical care, medical guidance, medical advice. What is broadband good for? It's good for education. You know, schools can have snow days and kids could still learn. We can have learning occur during the summer. But what we often hear is that kids may not have access to broadband, to internet access, so they can use the tools that the schools are giving them. We know farmers need quick access. They're out in the combine and they're using computer technology at the same time. In fact, that's why, Lynn, the county is making a substantial investment in software and hardware, because it knows that if it upgrades its own system, it can do a better job of electronic records, it can do a better job of information sharing. We can talk about how information sharing can save taxpayers costs, provide services better, and enable greater cooperation among the city, county, school district, and other governmental agencies.
Thank you. Mr. Kolarz?
Yes, thank you very much. Our Association of Minnesota Counties Transportation and Broadband Committee is a committee that I serve on, so I'm learning more about, as Terry mentioned and Chuck too, northern Minnesota has some real issues. Here in this part of the state, we know that Sibley County made a tremendous investment in theirs, and they were not very happy with it at the beginning of the whole process. So it's a matter of state funding is going to be the lynch key to this whole thing. And so we need to keep encouraging our state representatives that if we're interested in providing these types of services, that state funding needs to be the way it goes. So right now, the state, I think, was at a $25 million allocation to be spread out over 87 counties, and most of them in the metro area and the large cities like St. Cloud, Rochester, Duluth, and Mankato are already covered, but that's not a lot of money, $25 million. It's just one of those, well, we'll give you some money, but then somewhere down the road, is the county going to have to take over again? That's where Sibley County had gone, so thank you.
All right. Moving on, we're going to start with the next question with Mr. Kolars, Mr. Zeman, then Mr. Morrow. Rather different subject. What, if any, role should the county play in addressing social and racial disparities in the county?
This is mine to start with.
Yes, it is.
Social and racial disparities in the
Yes.
county.
Should the county have a role in addressing those?
I was just listening to the county attorney debate earlier this evening, and there were some comments that at one time I used to share with my fellow commissioners, feeling that maybe people of color were placed in jail more often than Caucasians. But I heard our county attorney tonight say that that really isn't the case. I had that feeling in my head just by scanning the jail roster, that it seemed like more people of color were landing in jail for whatever reason. People who argue with me about that at that time say, if you do the crime, you do the time. And I understand that, but I think that as we are seeing more immigrants moving into our communities, these immigrants are working jobs that Caucasians don't want or can't work anymore, that we need to be mindful of what their needs are.
Thank you. Mr. Zeman.
We all are human beings. And if we are good citizens, good human beings, whether we are an elected official or not, we should be concerned or raise a voice when there are social and racial discrimination. It's just something that, bottom line for almost any of these items is common sense on how you deal with things. And if we cannot treat our fellow man in a respectable, considerate, meaningful way, then we should not be, first of all, we should not be elected officials. We need to ensure that either at the city level, state level, county level, whatever it is, that people are treating people fairly. Thank you.
Mr. Morrow.
Yeah, I certainly agree with Jack and Chuck that people should be treated fairly, absolutely. But I think your question was, what can the county do, or should the county do anything to address social and racial disparities? And I'm going to throw in there economic disparities to my response. I think, Jack, you actually touched on something that the county attorney talked about earlier. One thing that I think all levels of government should do is track and measure what they're doing and the potential impacts it has. So at the court level, to track to track prosecutions, to track convictions, to track probation, to see what the impacts are and whether there are disparities and whether those disparities are being caused by the governmental action. We're seeing the same thing at the school level. In the schools, we're seeing questions about discipline and treatment, and the Department of Human Rights has actually worked with 43 school districts around the state because there are disparities in the disciplinary actions in our schools. That's a role for government to play. See what you're doing and see the impact of your actions, governmental actions, and see if there are disparities that are exacerbated because of the governmental action. And it's absolutely true that our population in Nicollet County is going to shift, just like every other county. We see that movement happening now. We're going to have more people come to our community, and we need to have an ethos as a county that we accept, we invite, we welcome, and we will not engage in actions that exacerbate social, economic, and racial disparity.
Thank you. We're going to stick with you, Terry Morrow, followed by Mr. Kolars and Mr. Zeman for the next question, which concerns recreation. Do you support the idea of a sports facility in St. Peter, which proponents insist would be a regional attraction? And what should county residents' financial responsibility be for that?
Sure. It's interesting. I remember talking with Todd Prafke right after this building was built, because I live right across the street, so I get to see it every day. And the response I got was the demand meant we could have built 2, and there would have been enough demand. I think that was from out-of-town sports and other events. Should we be building a new sports facility? I remember I was on the school board. The question was, should we build another ice sheet for hockey in St. Peter? The question was actually building it at Gustavus and trying to work out a partnership. And I do think, Lynette, if we're going to build another facility, a sports facility in St. Peter, that we need to try to do a partnership both of public and private. I would strongly encourage the county, the city, and Gustavus, and the school district to work together to see if there are common needs for the facility you're describing. I would also look to see if there's private funding available. I think recreation is an important part of a healthy community. I think it attracts people to communities. I think it brings economic benefits. I think everyone here who goes and shops and buys food and buys gas in town when they come to this facility just shows how this can be an economic driver as well as an enhancement to our community life. So I'm open to a sports facility. I'd like to know what type exactly folks are thinking of in the end. I think it can only be done in a partnership. It should not be done simply by the county.
Mr. Kolars.
Yeah, I would agree with that. We have a similar situation in North Mankato where there's been talk of having some sort of county inputting some money for a North Mankato facility. And I've done my own research on this, and it's a 50-50 split with people really talking about it. But as Terry mentioned, and I'm interested how Chuck is going to answer, because the question is about St. Peter, not North Mankato.
Correct.
But the question is about Nicollet County funding. You know, making the amenities of a sports facility happen would be, certainly have to be a partnership. But there was a partnership for the ice arena in Mankato 30 years ago. My first day on the job as a Nicollet County Commissioner back in 1997, a couple of the St. Peter commissioners said, oh, we're not going to be on that Ice Palace deal anymore, and we were left without it. And so we're still not part of that. And so that partnership with Blue Earth County, Mankato, North Mankato School District 77, and Nicollet County lost a partner at the time. I'm all about partnering, but how does it fit what the goals of Nicollet County are? And I don't know. I'd need more research on that.
All right, thank you. Mr. Zeman.
This is something I'm a little bit more familiar with because people involved in it, when they first started talking about it, came to me and wanted my opinion on it and whether they could make it go. I told them, like everything else, if you have a desire to have something like this, you need to keep with it, keep on it, and get a lot of input on it, and then by all means the city would take a look at it. The partnering thing is the only way it would work. The facility that they were talking about, easily $25 million. I don't think the county should be involved in it. I do think Gustavus, the schools, and the city should be involved in it. The county, granted, it will help, or anything would help. And the private funding thing, I know they've talked to, and I've talked to, especially now we're trying to build a pavilion. I've talked to many, many people, met with a lot of different business people, organizations, as far as getting private funding for some of these things like this. But the recreational facility is a long way down the line as far as a priority list. I hate to, if Mr. Elger does see this, I think I've told him this, Lee. The city has certain priorities, and this one is like number 5 or 6 on the list, and there's some big ones in front of it. But it doesn't mean that we can't be working toward that. Their goal initially was, hey, maybe we can get something done in about 7 years or so, at least start it. Thank you.
All right. We're going to switch a little to health in our county, starting with Mr. Zeman, then Mr. Morrow, and Mr. Kolars. So the question is, what more, if anything, do you think public health and social services departments should be doing to address chemical dependency, including opioid abuse in our county?
Any drug crisis, as opioid is a national crisis, needs to be taken care of or needs to be dealt with. Things that the city, as I've been on, and there's some city council members here, but once again, I get back to there's all 7 of us that make decisions. But what the city has done, and we had here recently, within the last few months, Senator Smith come and visit. The city partnered with Southwest Minnesota Housing and with the county's input for creating what's called a SOLAS project, which is a 30-unit facility for people that come out of, I know it's not called drug court anymore, but come out of drug court, for females and their families, instead of couch hopping and doing that. Senator Smith was here to visit, and in some way, if she could incorporate the concept that we did on this SOLAS project, if she could work it into an opioid crisis project with other states on a nationwide basis. So yes, we need to address it. It's just not going to go away on its own.
Thank you. Mr. Morrow.
Well, yes, you're absolutely right. We need to address it. We should address it. I would remind you to go back to our earlier answers about budget. And this costs, as Jack said earlier, we're needing to add case managers and staff at the county level to provide these services because the demand for the services is increasing. And certainly in part it is the opioid crisis, as you in this question mentioned. So that's part of making those tough decisions, is deciding what services does the county need to provide, what services is the county mandated to provide by either the state or federal government in chemical dependency, for example, and how does the county then going to reasonably pay for it? And I would say this is also a situation in which I think partnership would be tremendously valuable, because this crisis isn't just affecting the county, it's affecting our schools, it's affecting the city, it's affecting the college, it's affecting employers, it's affecting families. We could be bringing people together even more than we are right now. I think we're doing a good job now. But I think to really resolve this, to really address it, we're going to have to do a couple things. One, help those who are already deeply in need, and also work on prevention to try to help keep out more people falling into, finding themselves in chemical dependency. But let's not forget that we also have mental health services for kids, mental health services for adults, protection of vulnerable adults, protection of kids against malnutrition. We have a lot of services that are in the health arena that we also feel are vitally important to our residents in county.
Thank you. Mr. Kolars.
Yeah, addressing chemical dependency is our public health nurses and their cooperation with working with our county attorney in educating people about what these disasters are, okay? What is happening in homes. We need to work with schools, and I think that that's just a partnership, an educational partnership. We need to work with our public health recipients. The people who are receiving help from the county need to be more aware of what's going on. And in fact, in many cases, they may be living it if they're receiving any kind of assistance. So I think we're working on answers for it, but it's a matter of educating people. I mean, the school district has to deal with it, the city has to deal with it, the county has to deal with it. But it's our county health and human services and attorney who are educating folks.
Thank you. We're going to start the next question with Mr. Kolars, then Mr. Zeman, and Mr. Morrow. What message would you most like to send to the state legislators?
I often make the joke, used to make the joke that the state legislature treated us like the red-headed stepchild, didn't like us very much. But I've learned that it's more of a partnership, and we need to be able to communicate, and I think we're doing a good job of communicating it. My message to the state legislature is to answer the transportation needs throughout the state of Minnesota with a massive transportation budget that allows all counties to be fully funded. There are needs in this state that we have just kicked down the road. We've kicked the can down the road, and pretty soon there won't be any more road left. We'll be kicking it into a ditch. So that's my main message. And also, since Commissioner Stenson is leaving, and both you gentlemen are looking to replace him, is to end those mandates from the state, which come to the county or to the city, and say, if you're going to create a mandate, you're going to fund the mandate. We can't have, the sign is up again. We just can't have unfunded mandates and
Okay.
try to do our job well.
Thank you, Mr. Zeman.
Yeah, I'm going to reiterate a lot what Jack just said, that if you're mandating something, find a way to pay for it instead of passing it on down the line. It's easy to do. We have witnessed that with the city, with LGA, the local government aid, cutting back, and even if they could get back to 2002 levels, which was amazingly higher than what it is now, it would help out these smaller communities and able to do some things. The other thing I would tell not only the state legislature, but all government bodies is get your work done, quit creating a divide, and let's work together so in order to do that, so we can all benefit. Thank you.
And Mr. Morrow.
Well, I think the county did a very good job of giving messages to me when I represented the county on what work to take. I honestly do. I think it was a great working relationship. And I was able to bring ideas back. I was able to talk about that wheelage tax and the local option tax. So I think that you're absolutely right. Transportation. The state should be paying for transportation. We have an outdated method of providing safe roads and bridges in this state, and it's falling on counties. And it's falling, to some extent, on cities as well. And it's especially hard in Nicollet County. Now, if you just take St. Peter, and the mayor knows this, the two biggest employers don't pay property tax: the Regional Treatment Center and the college up the hill. So when the state makes decisions and then says, well, just pass it on to property tax, Nicollet County gets hurt more than other counties by comparison because of the percentage of non-property tax property and major employers within this part. Now, certainly North Mankato has sizable employers, a sizable tax base. But as a county, it is not good state policy to pass on costs to the county, to pass a law, a mandate, to use Chuck's word, and then to not pay for it. So certainly in transportation, we have health and human services needs. They must be addressed. They're right. It is right to help people. And it's also to the community's benefit to make sure that people have health care, a roof over their head, food to eat, a sound education, safe roads and bridges, and a county can play a tremendously important role in telling our state legislators and the legislature as a whole, get your work done so we can serve our communities.
Thank you. Our legislators' ears should be burning. We're going to start with Mr. Morrow, then Mr. Kolars, and Mr. Zeman on the next question.
Do you have another question?
Yes, I think we have time yet. We started.
Started at 9:15.
Yeah. Commissioners serve on a variety of boards and committees. Do you have a particular skill or interest that would lead you for a particular, to ask for a particular assignment? Mr.
I'm sorry,
Morrow.
I'm sorry,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
apologize.
You're it.
I missed that. Well, I would answer that in a couple of ways. First, Jack and other commissioners have been on committees and the like already, and I would be a little bit hesitant to say, I want your committees that you've been on, because I want to respect his experience and expertise. So when I answer the question, I don't want to mean to displace, say I would do better than Jack. With that said, I think my background in transportation funding, I was on the House Transportation Policy and Finance Committee every year. I think I was able to do some good work on getting Highway 14 expanded, along with a lot of other people from North Mankato and Nicollet. I think that experience would help in Nicollet County. And so I think being on transportation-related committees would be helpful. My work on the agriculture, finance, and policy committees, again, gave me years of experience working with our area farmers, understanding farm issues, understanding how ag issues interrelate with the environment, how ag issues interrelate with transportation, broadband, and the like. So ag-related work, I think, would be very helpful. I mentioned before, I'm a lawyer. I think there are ways in which I could be helpful on committees that would be related to work that's related to our public safety and court systems, because, again, of my experience. But I'm happy to be on any committee. If I'm fortunate enough to be elected, then I'm very thrilled to be on any committee that I'd be appointed to.
Thank you. Mr. Collars.
So are these county committees that you're talking about?
I understand there are about 30 different boards and committees that the
Right.
county is involved in,
Okay.
so take your
So
pick.
typically, when a commissioner leaves or is retiring, those are open committee assignments. And so we'll tell you guys where you're going to be.
I'll tell you where to go, too.
I mean, but it's a joint partnership. I thought if you were talking about the state committees, Terry and Chuck are both familiar with the Association of Minnesota Counties. I've served on the Transportation Committee for the past 10 to 12 years, along with Highway 14 Committee, which you've been integral in. And so we may want to discuss that going forward. And Chuck, I'm interested to hear where you might want to go. But the whole committee assignment is done in December of the year, and the successor here will pick up Jim Stenson's committee assignments to begin with. And then if they have interest to say, I'd like to be on that committee, Minnesota Valley Action Council, or whatever it may be, then we can visit with the other people who are currently holding those positions. And they may just say, yeah, I'd like you to take that.
Thanks for explaining that.
That's how it
Mr.
works.
Zeman, any comments?
Yes, being involved with the city of St. Peter over the last almost 7 years now, I've been on a variety of committees, and a lot of them are called the same as a lot of the county committees are. I've been on the economic development, I've been on housing, I've been on planning and zoning, I've been on tourism. Since I've been elected mayor, I still serve on a couple of those, but I also committed myself to go to not all of them, but most of the other committees that meet, just to get a firsthand knowledge of what happens. You said 30 committees. The county website lists 75.
Oops, I was a
committees.
little off.
Some of them, I'm not sure if they're functional.
All very important.
They're all important. But there are 75 of them. I would think there'd be enough to go around in order to satisfy all 5 commissioners' needs. Thank you.
All right, let's move to closing statements. And we'll start with Mr. Zeman, go to Mr. Morrow, and then Mr. Collars.
Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you to the League of Women Voters, again, to the Chamber, and to the Herald. Things I'd like to point out, I am a 4th generation Minnesotan. I am doing this because the same reason I ran 7 years ago, that I feel I can make a difference. I take each of these positions that I've held, I take the job seriously, but I don't take myself seriously. We, as elected officials, if you look through the whole history of the city of St. Peter, the county, the state, we're here for just a little bit of time to make a difference. Jack maybe a little bit longer than some of us. all of the things that we do, and I mentioned this before, comes down to common sense. If we can apply some common sense and are able to talk to the people that are involved in these decisions, it's going to make it a lot better for us all. I refer, and I always like to close on these things, to refer to my dad. My dad had an 8th grade education, but he was the smartest person I ever knew because he had common sense. Thank you.
Thanks. Mr. Morrow.
Well, thank you, and I too would like to thank the League of Women Voters, the Herald, the Chamber, and everyone who came tonight, and those who may be watching us if they're not watching the Vikings game. This is very important to me. We all serve our communities, we all serve our families, we all serve our neighbors in the ways that best fit our skills, our ability, our interests, and the needs that we see around us. Public service is a deep, deep foundation for me in my soul. I believe that I should do what I can with my ability, my knowledge, my experience on the city committees, on the school board, in the state legislature. If there's an opportunity to use that knowledge and experience to help Nicollet County, then that's why I put myself forward to do this fall. Nicollet County is a great place to live. It's a great place to work. It's a great place to raise a family because of the hard work and public service that many, many people before any of the three of us ever did. Before we came here, it was a great place, and we can help make it a great place, continue to make it a great place, to build on our opportunities, to meet our challenges, and I'm thankful for the opportunity to put my presentation forward and to share some ideas with all of you tonight. Thank you.
Mr. Kollars.
And I'm sorry to the audience here, whenever someone asks me a question, I focus on her, so I'll want to direct these last remarks to you. Teddy Roosevelt said, "Speak softly and carry a big stick." This seems to be my crutch for a while as I get over the whole idea of another knee operation. But I want to say that these 20 years that I've spent on the county board have been the most instructive in my life. And I'm learning every single day to make new partnerships with our neighbors, to be a better commissioner. I'm not a city of North Mankato commissioner or a city of St. Peter commissioner or a rural commissioner. We are called county commissioners. And in that definition, in my mind, this is what we do. What we do works to benefit all citizens of Nicollet County, not just those on County Road 12 or down the street in North Mankato. We have to look at it that way. And so I think that experience matters, and I'm looking forward to working with one of these gentlemen to replace Commissioner Stenson, our two newly elected commissioners, and Marie Drantle in the coming year. I want to thank you all for being here. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to thank you, candidates Jack Kollars running unopposed in District 4 in North Mankato, and Terry Morrow and Chuck Zeman running in District 2 here in St. Peter. And thank you, audience, for being here. I want to thank the St. Peter Herald, the St. Peter Chamber, our timers, and Harriet for keeping me on track. This concludes our forum this evening. If you have further questions, please contact the candidates individually. Thank you, Tony, for filming us, and don't forget to vote on November 6th. Good night.